dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga pulisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga pulisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policymaking upang bigyan din ng kahalagahan ng pulisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan!
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socio-economic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Service through policy research.
This morning. For newcomers to the DPRM, we hold this celebration annually to promote policy research and collaboration with policymakers. Every September, we conduct a series of activities that gathers leaders and researchers to discuss focus areas for development and strategize timely, well-informed solutions. This kickoff forum and press conference aim to engage our media partners in raising public awareness about DPRM, highlighting the importance of policy research and the key activities planned for this year. We will introduce this year's theme shortly. Before we begin, we invite you to actively engage in today's discussions. We will have a Q&A session later, so please prepare your questions and comments. Now, to formally start our program, let us welcome PIDS President Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr. to give his opening remarks and introduce this year's theme for the DPRM.
Morning, distinguished partners, guests, friends from the media, and those watching us live. I'm honored to speak before you today as we kick off the month-long celebration of the second Development Policy Research Month for the DPRM, led by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. In collaboration with the interagencies taken to the PIDS and DPRM every September to promote policy research and importance to our policymakers, cabinet leaders, public for evidence-based policymaking, planning, and action. The celebration is pursuant to Malacañang Proclamation 247 issued in 2015. For this year's DPRM, we aim to celebrate our progress with both recovery and growth by focusing on a critical demographic, Filipino middle class. This group has consistently been pivotal in driving economic advancement and promoting social well-being. The 2016 AmBisyon Natin 2040 underscored the importance of a thriving middle class, envisioning a prosperous middle class society where no one is free. The research conducted by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies reaffirms the significance of the middle class, including that expanding this group is essential for our nation's stable and sustainable. As one of the largest income segments, middle class is a vital driver of the economy, actively participating in both society. To stimulate consumption, drive production, generate employment, laying the foundation for a prosperous economy. Between 2015 and 2021, the size of the middle class in the Philippines experienced fluctuation. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority of PIDS shows that the middle class grew from 16.1% of the population in 2015 to 18.5% in 2015. However, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted this positive trend, posing a middle class strength flat at 16.9%. Our ongoing efforts to rebuild and recover from the pandemic's impact are steering us back in the course towards achieving the goals of the for the latest data. Country's gross national income per capita reached 241,000 pesos, 14.7 50% increase from 210,000 pesos per capita. As of 2024, the Philippines remains lower middle income country, but poised for further. This upward momentum, coupled with the nation's aspiration for vital prosperity, inspired the team to and DPRM, securing a future for all by governing a resilient middle class. For Filipino, Pagtiyak sa Kinabukasan sa lahat sa pamamagitan ng Pagtatag ng Malakas na middle class. Sa mga sinukuanong binisaya, pagsiguro sa pagmaon alang sa tanan, pinaagi sa Lambos at saka Malibon. This year's theme highlights both the opportunities and challenges in expanding the Philippine middle class, especially in the light of emerging global megatrends that could either accelerate growth or exacerbate poverty. Our discussions will focus on the multi-pronged strategies needed to foster opportunities for expansion and create new avenues for wealth generation with the goal of transforming the middle class into a more resilient force. Achieving vision for a stronger, more resilient middle class will require addressing both global and including those posed by climate change and technological disruption. Issues we began to explore in last year's DPRM. Throughout this month, our knowledge sharing activities will build into how we can harness global megatrends and the momentum of climate change action to expand and protect the middle class, including the main cornerstone of the national progress. Today, we welcome our distinguished panel members who will share their insights on the role of the middle class in the nation's development with both sectoral strategies we can employ to ensure success. Thank our panelists, Mr. Edillon Albert, Senior Research Fellow at the PIDS, Undersecretary Rosemarie, National Economic Development Authority, Attorney Marco L.P. Sargillo, Executive Director of Philippines, and Dr. Daniela Braun, Country Director of Konrad and Aniceto, for their insight that deepen our understanding. I also wish to express my sincerest appreciation for the DPRM members in this important stage. Our partners, Pilipinas, National Economic and Development Authority, Department of the and Local Government, Civil Service Commission, Philippine Information Agency, Presidential Management Staff, Department of Budget and Management, Senate Economic Planning Office, Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department. Thank you so much for your continued support in the year. We are also grateful to the Commission on Higher Education and Functional Planning Development Authority, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Department of Information and Communication, Department of Trade and Industry, and Technical Education and Skills Development Authority for accepting our invitation to be part of the DPRM. Lastly, I thank our friends from the media for their support. Value you as a partner in knowledge dissemination. To close, I invite you all to watch this video discussing the theme of this year's DPRM. Thank you very much.
There you have it. Our theme for this year, securing a future for all by growing a resilient middle class. Thank you very much for the warm welcome, Dr. Orbeta. Today, we will examine what constitutes the middle class, the unique challenges and opportunities they face in the globalized arena, and development strategies to expand the middle class. We will now have a presentation by PIDS Senior Research Fellow, Dr. Jose Ramon Albert, who will discuss the DPRM theme and concept paper to deepen our understanding of the middle class and their role in socioeconomic development. Dr. Jose Ramon Albert is a professional statistician and senior research fellow at PIDS. He earned a BS in Applied Math summa cum laude from De La Salle University in 1988, an MS in Statistics in 1989, and a PhD in Statistics in 1983 from the State University of New York at Stony Brook. From September 2012 to February 2014, he led the National Statistical Coordination Board as Secretary General before it was merged into the Philippine Statistics Authority. Dr. Albert has consulted with various Philippine government agencies, private firms, and international organizations. Over 2 decades, he has worked in 25 countries across different regions on poverty diagnostics, econometrics, survey analysis, has also taught at various higher education institutions in the Philippines, and has written extensively on education, poverty, social issues, and development. Thank you for opening today's discussion.
Thank you, Roel. Good morning. So today I will be presenting key insights from a background paper titled Wealth Creation for Expanding the Middle Class in the Philippines. This paper was prepared jointly with my colleagues, Dr. Roel Briones and also Dr. John Paulo Rivera, who just recently joined us at PIDS. And this provides a context for the theme of this year's Development Policy Research Month on securing a future for all by growing a resilient middle class. In this presentation, I will firstly discuss what do we mean by middle class and where do the middle class reside. Then I will proceed to describing the middle class in more detail, how they live, demographic characteristics, educational attainment, and education of children, labor and employment, assets and amenities, based on the 2021 Family Income and Expenditure Survey conducted by the Philippine Statistics Authority. You might wonder why 2021, and we thought that the PSA already released the 2023 data, particularly on poverty. However, we should note that while last month the PSA did release poverty statistics based on the 2023 Family Income and Expenditure Survey, but micro data for this survey has not yet been released. So anyway, so we're just focusing on data on based on 2021. Finally, we will also try to answer a basic question. Given our growth trajectories have changed because of COVID, can we sustain the middle class growth? We suggest a pathway for middle class expansion focusing on 4 key areas. We should note that AmBisyon 2040 articulates the middle class, the country's dream of a predominantly middle class society where no one is poor. This is largely because the middle class plays a crucial role in economic growth, stability, and sustainable development. A strong and growing middle class drives domestic consumption and investment, provides a source of human capital for boosting productivity and competitiveness, and contributes to social and political stability by fostering a stronger state in the nation's development. In the literature, the definition of middle class, just like poverty, has been contentious. There is no single definition. Economists tend to define the middle class in terms of either absolute thresholds in per capita income or expenditure in purchasing power parity or PPP dollars, or in relative terms with respect to the average or median income. Social scientists, on the other hand, use a non-monetary metric. In the Philippines, some market researchers make use of a composite index to divide the entire population into 5 socioeconomic classes, A, B, C, D, E. While some statisticians like my predecessor, Dr. Virola of the NSCB, made use of a cluster analytic approach. In our paper, we adopt an income-based definition of the middle class following a methodology that I espoused way back in 2018, where we define the middle class as households with per capita incomes between 2 to 12 times the official poverty line. This amounts to about a monthly family income in 2021 of between 25,000 pesos per month to around 145,000 for a family of 5. Based on this definition, the middle class in the Philippines has grown from about 28.5% of the population in 1991 to about 40% in 2021. However, this growth has not been consistent over time. The COVID pandemic appears to have reversed some of the gains made in recent years. The middle class was actually already about 44% in 2018. And of course, if we're going to think of the 2023 data, maybe the middle class would grow back again to around maybe 45%. Just because we know that the PSA already has mentioned that poverty rates in 2023 have actually reduced from the levels that we had in 2021. The question is, how can we grow the middle class to be around, say, 80% in the next few years? As of 2021, the National Capital Region, Calabarzon, and Central Luzon have the highest concentration of middle-class households. In NCR, 3 out of 5 persons are from the middle class, while in CAR, half, about 51% belong to middle income. Meanwhile, Calabarzon has the same share of low and middle class income classes, around 49.6%. As of 2021, in most regions, low-income families are the majority. This might still change depending on the data from 2023. In 2021, however, the majority, about 60% of Filipinos, belong to low-income families with per capita incomes below twice the poverty line. That's around 25,000 for a family of 5. Calabarzon, Central Luzon, and Central Visayas had the highest shares of low-income persons collectively, accounting for about 23% of the total income, low income of population in the Philippines. On the other hand, the middle income class comprised around 40% of the population in 2021, most of whom are residing in Metro Manila, Calabarzon, and Central Luzon, and together contribute about 52% of the total middle income Filipinos. Only 0.9% of Filipinos had high incomes defined as around 20 times the poverty line. Around maybe about 200, more than around 150, more or less 145,000 for a family of 5. Majority of these high-income families also are concentrated in the NCR, Calabarzon, and Central Visayas, contributing about 40% to the total high-income population. Though not shown directly in this graph here, the middle class is predominantly urban, with about 61% of urban residents belonging to the middle class in 2021, compared to around 34% of rural residents. This has been more or less the same story across the years, even prior to the pandemic. What is shown in this graph here is that in 2021, most of urban residents are low income, but not poor. This is a big change compared to the profile prior to the COVID pandemic, particularly in 2018, when most urban residents were middle income class. Those from rural areas are dominated by low income but not poor, whether in 2018 or in 2021. Middle class households tend to be smaller than low income households with an average household size of 3.6 members compared to 5.0 for low income households in 2021. The most common household types among Filipino families, particularly low-income households, are adult couples with children and adult couples with children and other adults. Low-income households are more likely to have larger multi-generational families compared to higher-income households. Other adult combinations with children households are more common in low and middle-income families than in upper-income families. Middle-class households allocate a larger share of their expenditure to education, 1.3%, health, 3.2%, and transportation, 8.8%, compared to low-income households. However, their spending on these items is still much lower than that of high-income households. In 2021, wages were the primary income source for middle-income households, about 51%, followed by overseas remittances, 8.3%, and domestic income transfers, around 6%. On the other hand, low-income households relied more on domestic income transfers, 11%, and less on overseas remittances, 3.5%, with wages accounting for about 47% of their total income. Also, high-income households receive a higher share of their income from overseas remittances, 10%, compared to middle-income and low-income households, while domestic transfers, 2.7%, and wages contributed less to their total income. The middle class has significantly higher levels of educational attainment compared to low-income classes. In 2021, 40% of middle-class Filipinos aged 15 and above had completed college compared to only 14.5% of their low-income counterparts. While the overall share of out-of-school children among middle-income families is relatively low, 4%, there are still significant challenges in ensuring early childhood education, particularly for 5-year-olds. Nearly a quarter of 5-year-old children from middle-income families as of 2021 are not attending school. The middle class is more likely to be engaged in formal salaried employment compared to low-income classes. In 2021, about 4 out of 5 employed middle-class persons had permanent jobs. The primary source of income for middle-class households are wages and salaries, followed by entrepreneurial activities and overseas remittances, as I mentioned earlier. Overseas workers play a significant role in the income of Filipino families. About 5% of Filipino families have an OFW, and the presence of an OFW, however, varies across income clusters, with high-income families, 9.2% of them, having a much higher rate compared to middle income, 5%, and low income, around 1% of families. However, the majority of families in OFWs belong to the middle class. Middle class households have higher levels of asset ownership and access to amenities compared to low income households. In 2021, 98% of middle class households in urban areas owned a mobile phone. 93% owned a television, and 46% own a computer. Access to safe drinking water is also much higher among middle-class households. Nearly universal access to electricity, about 99.8% for middle income, compared to 93% for low income and 100% for high income classes. Access to safe drinking water is also much higher for middle-class households. The COVID pandemic, however, as I already mentioned, has had a significant impact on the middle class in the country. Many middle-class households have experienced job losses, reduced incomes, and increased education on health and expenditure. The pandemic has highlighted the vulnerability of some middle-class households, particularly those in the lower middle income segment. So to harness the potential of the middle class as a driver of inclusive growth, we need a strategy not only to expand the middle class sustainably, but also to transform it to a resilient middle class that can withstand welfare risks from mega trends that can further heighten existing inequalities. We thus propose a four-pronged pathway for middle class expansion and transformation towards resiliency. This comprises, first, promoting social justice in natural resource management and climate change, which is crucial for ensuring the benefits of economic growth are shared equitably. This includes strengthening community-based natural resource management frameworks, investing in sustainable livelihood and value chain development for resource-dependent communities, mainstreaming climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction in local development planning and budgeting, developing a just transition plan for workers and communities affected by the shift towards a low-carbon economy. Second, harnessing new opportunities in trade and investments for MSMEs, which play a vital role in broad-based growth for the country. Harnessing these new opportunities in trade and investments, particularly through regional economic integration and global value chains, can help MSMEs overcome barriers to growth and competitiveness. This includes strengthening export promotion programs and trade facilitation measures, providing targeted support to MSMEs in the form of export coaching, trade financing, and market intelligence, implementing reforms to reduce barriers to FDI and improving the ease of doing business, and of course, promoting innovation and technology adoption among MSMEs. Third, we want to make sure that we're ensuring a future-ready workforce and social protection for we know that human capital development is a key enabler of middle-class growth. So ensuring a future-ready workforce and also social protection is crucial for enabling more Filipinos to adapt to the changing demands of the labor market and to benefit from the opportunities of the digital economy. And this includes investing in quality education and skills development programs, particularly in STEM and digital skills, strengthening in industry academic linkages, and promoting work-based learning programs, expanding social protection coverage to informal and gig workers, promoting lifelong learning and reskilling opportunities for workers, and finally, improving digital governance and public service delivery. We know that digital technologies are transforming economies and societies, creating new opportunities for entrepreneurship, employment, and learning. Improving digital governance and public service delivery can help enhance the efficiency, transparency, and accountability of government services and create new opportunities for citizen engagement and participation. So we list in this slide some past studies on the middle class, and more importantly, we'd like to point out in conclusion that realizing this vision of a predominantly middle-class society in the Philippines, as stated in AmBisyon 2040, will require bold and concerted action across multiple fronts. It will also necessitate effective leadership, coordination, and collaboration among government, the private sector, civil society, and development partners. By putting in place a comprehensive agenda for middle-class expansion, the Philippines can build a more resilient, equitable, and prosperous future for all Filipinos. Thank you for your attention.
So thanks to my wife and 2 kids, I am above average of the middle class, at least in terms of household size of 4. So thanks to that comprehensive discussion of the middle class, we are now familiar with this demographic. May I invite you to watch this video prepared by PIDS on the DPRM and conference team.
Across the Philippines, the middle class is proving to be a vital force in driving economic progress and shaping our society's future. Comprising around 40% of our population, this group of over 34 million Filipinos is more than just a demographic. It is the engine that powers our nation's growth as the Philippines sets its sights on attaining upper middle income status. This group includes regular wage earners, educators, small business owners, and innovators, among others, all of whom play a key role in achieving our country's socio-economic development goals. Beyond just economic status, being part of the middle class symbolizes a quest for a better future through education, stable employment, and access to essential services. However, this pursuit comes with its own set of challenges.
As a nation, the middle class is the foundation of our economic resilience. By investing in their development, we can create a more unified society, bridging gaps between different economic strata and promoting greater national cohesion. Economic uncertainties, such as the recent pandemic, have shown that even those who were once stable can face significant setbacks. Hence, expanding and strengthening the middle class is essential for enhancing overall societal stability and progress. This year's Development Policy Research Month explores strategies to achieve these objectives. Under the theme, Securing a Future for All by Growing a Resilient Middle Class, the focus is on crafting policies that enable more Filipinos to enter and thrive within the middle class, thereby enhancing overall societal stability and progress.
Global megatrends present opportunities for expanding the middle class. However, regulatory hurdles, skills gap, and infrastructure issues can limit its potential. Reforms are needed, including easing business practices, modernizing agriculture, and investing in renewable energy and logistics. So, how can we achieve this? A key focus is addressing the structural barriers that prevent many from achieving middle-class status. This involves improving access to quality education, expanding healthcare services, and ensuring stable, well-paying job opportunities. Promoting social justice in natural resource management and climate action is also crucial. By ensuring that the benefits of economic growth are distributed inclusively and vulnerable communities are protected from climate and disaster risks and other shocks, we create opportunities for new wealth creation, allowing lower-income Filipinos to improve their livelihoods and join the middle class. Another strategy for expanding the middle class is to support MSMEs, the backbone of our economy, through new trade and investment opportunities. By helping them access regional and global markets, we can create better job opportunities and increase incomes. Human capital development is also one of the key enablers in middle-class expansion. Investing in education, digital skills, and social safety nets will help workers transition into higher-paying jobs in emerging industries, enabling more people to join the middle class.
Inclusive growth means creating a society where everyone has an opportunity to succeed. As the middle class expands, it boosts consumer spending, drives demand, and stimulates economic activity. This growth helps reduce income inequality and strengthen social cohesion by providing more equitable opportunities in education, employment, and advancement. Bridging the digital divide and promoting social justice are essential to this vision, ensuring all communities can fully engage in the economy and contribute to a more inclusive society.
Globally, the middle class continues to expand, now representing over half of the world's population. The Philippines must ensure that its middle class grows with resilience, as this will form the foundation of a strong and inclusive economy. Inclusive growth goes beyond merely lifting people out of poverty. It is about creating opportunities for all Filipinos to improve their lives, contribute to their communities, and participate in nation building. By expanding and strengthening the middle class, we pave the way for a prosperous future where everyone benefits and no one is left behind. This year's Development Policy Research Month is a reminder that the middle class is at the forefront of the country's drive towards a better future. The government and other stakeholders must come together to support policies and initiatives that promote social justice, enhance opportunities, and ensure that progress benefits every Filipino.
We will now expound on the contemporary challenges faced by the middle class, globally and locally. We are fortunate to be joined today by a panel of leaders from various organizations in development. We will give each panelist 15 minutes to share their insight. I am delighted to introduce our first panelist, Undersecretary Rosemarie Edillon of the National Economic Development Authority. Yusek Rose is presently the Undersecretary for National Development Policy and Planning of the NEDA. She holds a PhD in economics from La Trobe University in Australia, an MA degree in economics from University of the Philippines School of Economics, and an MS degree in statistics from the UP School of Statistics. She is also a 2019 Presidential Gawad Career Executive Service awardee. Among her major responsibilities is shepherding the formulation of the Philippine Development Plan, elaboration of the country's priorities over the medium term, and is the blueprint of government policies, programs, and projects. She chairs the Social Development Committee, Technical Board, Technical Committee on Tariff-Related Matters, and National Innovation Council Executive Technical Board. The floor is now yours, Yusek.
Thank you, Dr. Well. That's me. So, good morning to everyone. And first of all, my sincerest appreciation to PIDS for selecting this theme and also bringing the discussion back to the AmBisyon Natin in 2014. Indeed, that is actually what I use for my title here. That growing and strengthening the middle class is actually the path to AmBisyon Natin 2040. And thank you also to Dr. Toots Albert for that overview of the middle class, defining the middle class and characteristics of the middle class. Actually, back in, I think it was in 1996 or 1997, when Dr. Jock Yap and I, and actually si Ermi Yap, we actually did also a paper on defining the middle class. And so that was one of the first attempts to define the middle class in the Philippines. And using empirical data, using cluster analysis, and using the Mahalanobis distance to differentiate the classes in the Philippines, we actually came up with the cut-offs where the middle class would be uh, the lower middle class will be between the 5 times the poverty line up to 7 times the poverty line. And then the upper middle class will be the 7 times until the 9 times of the poverty line. Now, of course, that one needs to be updated as well. But I would think that there's there's already some literature on that, and therefore we leave it up to the researchers because this is actually a crucial, as you know, crucial strategy for growth, especially inclusively. So let me just proceed. Yes. Okay. So, so this one, I simply want to say that actually growing the middle class is the path to Ambisyon Natin 2040. And this is my main message for this topic. But before that, of course, when you grow the middle class, obviously that means you reduce poverty. And then strengthening the middle class is another matter of wrong. But before I proceed further, I really need to address the elephant in the room and settle the controversies that we had with respect to defining what is the poor. But of course, I'm here preaching to the choir, so this may still be medyo madaya. But anyway, just to say that we at the NEDA recognize that poverty is multidimensional. It actually looks at it's actually about um, several causes, several reasons, and therefore requires also different measures. There's of course the monetary approach to defining poverty, and this one simply defines it in terms of what is the money or insufficient. It's defined as insufficient money to pay for a minimum of the necessities of life. And then there's the other uh, thought. This one is by Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate, which actually takes on the capability approach and is concerned with evaluating in terms of his or her actual ability to achieve various valuable functioning as part of living. So for Amartya Sen, it's really about being what you want to be and doing what you want to do. And therefore, poverty is about not being able to be what you want to be and doing what you want. And then there is this other one, which is about social inclusion, where poverty in this case refers to the dynamic process of being shut out fully, being deprived, or partially from any social, economic, political, or cultural systems. So this is really the deprivation part of it, or the exclusion, the social exclusion dimension of poverty, which of course we can say is actually an outcome of poverty. And then there's also this participatory approach, where in this case, it is based on what constitutes the circumstances of the poor. And thus, the definition of poverty is seen to spring from the way poor people actually analyze their own reality. And this is usually measured in terms of self-rating. This is the self-rated poverty of the Philippines. Now, in our case, this is actually how we define poverty. It's really in terms of the means approach or the income approach. So this is actually this taken from the PSA website. The poverty is a characteristic of the family. So this is something that we also need to emphasize here, that we define poverty whenever we actually compute for the poverty stats whenever we conduct the family income and expenditure survey, and all the questions that pertain to the family. So, so thus, if a family is classified as poor, then all the members of the family will be counted as poor. In other words, a family cannot have poor and non-poor members. So either all members are poor or all members are not poor. So that is one thing that we have to specify here. One of the controversies really is, dividing up the, the, the threshold on a per capita, per person per day. Ganun. So it has to be in terms of the family. Now, what we want as well, when we say that, we want actually to reduce poverty incidence as measured by the same metric. So this one, let's say, just for illustration purposes. So you have here, let's say, a frequency distribution. And let's say that Z is actually the poverty line. And then you have on the x-axis the per capita income, and then on the y is your frequency. And then let's have that as the income distribution. And therefore, the proportion of that distribution that is to the left of the Z is the poverty incidence. Now, in terms of our topic right now, there is that line, let's say an M, representing the cutoff for the middle class. So probably anywhere in between Z and M would be the middle class. Now, what we want to achieve is really at the what do you call that? It's really shifting that distribution towards the right of that Z, so that so if you consider only that distribution curve, so it's really about reducing the incidence of the proportion of people who will be to the left of Z. Now, later on, most probably, we will need to redefine the Z. But for now, said that, given that we're just recovering from the pandemic, it's still too soon. It's still, it's not yet a normal year for us to be redefining that Z. Nonetheless, the objective is still to reduce that poverty incidence into single digits by 2020. So just to go back, and this one is also going to the topic of how do you now strengthen, first of all, grow the middle class, and then, of course, strengthen it. So we realize that this poverty, this middle class, this rich is actually part of a wider spectrum of well-being. So this is actually a framework that we have used a long time ago, and it has actually been improved over time. And this one actually begins with looking at the decision of the individual to participate in economic activity, either through the labor supply or through entrepreneurial activities. So this one is defined, is actually affected by a labor policy, the entrepreneurship policy, credit and business tax policy, and of course, business confidence. And that is how you determine whether, and that is what will determine whether an individual will want to participate in economic activity. So, given that he participated in the economic activity, then this one actually, this individual or the household will be earning income. Now, this income though could be increased or decreased depending on the transfers, net transfers, and then subsidies, and then the income tax policy. So like what happened during the Train 1, implementation of the Train 1. We expended the same labor supply, and yet we actually had more disposable income. And that's really because of the reduction in the income tax rate. Now, this income is either saved or spent. So, and what determines that would be the monetary policy, including incentives to save, access to markets, and of course, the consumer confidence. And then what is spent is now largely determines your consumption. But of course, not all of spending goes into consumption. There's still wastage. And of course, depending also on the prices, the consumption tax policy, and the availability of public services, which is very important. So when we actually had this UAQPE, so even if you did not spend on education services, you can still consume education services if you took advantage of the publicly provided education services. Same is true with healthcare. So even if you do not provide, we did not spend, for instance, as well, first on a personal level, we did not spend for the vaccines during the COVID, but because it was publicly provided, we were able to consume it. So this consumption is actually what brings about the outcomes, where the outcomes is really about the asset buildup, of human capital, physical capital, and financial capital. And then, of course, the outcomes, which are in terms of the life comforts, good health, and good education. But of course, it does not, again, the translation is not one for one. It really depends on the preferences and the quality of consumption. So like if you spend, let's say you consume a lot of food, it does not necessarily translate to good health if it is not the nutritious food that you eat. So, classic. And then we think that this one actually is what determines the perception of well-being, the life comforts that the individual is enjoying or the family is enjoying. Another thing is that aside from these outcomes, aside from these life comforts, there's still that intervention by the culture, values, and other aspects of well-being. In the case of the Philippines, we think that this one is really about being able to enjoy ang maginhawa, ang matatag, maginhawa, at panatag na buhay. Now, we should also note that the previous period's asset buildup is actually what will also determine this period's decision regarding labor supply or entrepreneurial activity. And then, of course, there's also the aspect of the access to markets, which is now affected by infrastructure, trade, transport, logistics, and innovation. Now, just to complete this illustration, these are the four aspects. This is actually how we define, perceive, or even measure poverty. You can have an income measure, which is what we have in the Philippines, an expenditure measure, which is usually what is being done in other countries. And then you have the outcome-based measures, and then the perception-based measure. So just to be clear that what we are measuring is that one, but we realize that there are several determinants leading up to that perception of well-being. And also just to say that there are already efforts to measure the outcome-based measure, okay, the outcome-based poverty, and also this about the quality of life. It's just that we're not yet done with that study. So anyway, going back to the middle class. So growing the middle class is really about reducing poverty. Now we need to strengthen the middle class. So I would say that it's really about focusing our strategies to achieving this ambition natin 2040. So this was an effort that was done in 2015, 2016, when we asked Filipinos, what is it that you want to do, want to be, and want to have by 2040? So that's 25 years from the time that we did it. Roughly a generation away. So roughly that would be the age gap between your parent and yourself. So this is the summation of that ambition natin 2040. Tatag, maginhawa, panatag na buhay. Our family is together. We have time with friends. We enjoy work-life balance and a strong sense of community. That's matatag. Maginhawa free from hunger and poverty. We live in a decent house with a secure long-term tenure, good transport and mobility options, travel and vacation opportunities, quality education and a decent job for the Maginhawa, and then for the Panatag, savings. We have enough resources for day-to-day needs and unexpected expenses. We enjoy peace and security, a long and healthy life, and comfortable retirement. Now, what we did next, and this one is already updated to new prices, is how much would it take to be able to enjoy this matatag, maginhawa, panatag na buhay. Now, just a disclaimer here, this is not based on a scientific study, so this is just, medyo Delphi technique lang. So, first of all, own a car. And this one will come up to, let's say, an amortization or depreciation cost plus O&M of about 25,000 per month. Oh, by the way, it's a family of 4. Ano yung kayo ba? Next. And then, sorry, you have money for day-to-day needs, let's say 50,000 a month. A medium-sized home, 26,000, that will be the amortization that you will need for a middle-sized home, say for 20 years. And then you educate your children, you send them to a private school because you think that it's the one that will give them the quality education. Okay. You want to spend also for, having time with the family and friends, let's say 10,000 a month, and then save up for that grand vacation of 8,000 a month so that at the end of the year, you can have that grand vacation. This one comes up to a tax implies a tax of about 45,000. And this one actually gives you 194,000 pesos for a family of 4 per month. Too much. Anyway, next. So, what we did next was what if we can have this comprehensive and enabling economic and social policy? For instance, let's have good transport. You don't need to own your own car. Let's have good transport options, safe, accessible, affordable. And let's say that we were able to bring this down to 5,000 a month, let's say. And then let's have very competitive industries that can bring down the prices of the goods that we want, okay, but quality. And so we're able to bring this down to, let's say, 40,000. Magastos ka pa rin. Anyway, and then let's have a very, very competitive construction industry and a finance sector. Let's aim for that credit rating of A so that we bring down the sovereign risk, bring down that interest rate, and this one actually, we can bring this down to 12,500. Next, let's have quality education in our public schools so that you don't have to pay a lot for tuition fee. They can get quality education if they can go to public schools, and that will just be for allowance, let's say 5,000 a month. Next, let's have good parks, like in Australia, like in many European countries. Let's have good parks so that you don't need to spend 10,000 just to have a bonding time with your family and friends. You just need snacks, 2,000 pesos a month. And then let's have a very competitive tourism sector. And let's have, let's clean up our beaches, let's clean up our rivers, so we would have many more options to have this vacation malapit lang. So let's just, you just need to save 5,000. And then let's have a very, very good tax reform policy. Okay, let's complete that comprehensive tax reform package and bring down that tax implication to only 22,500. And this one comes up to 92,000. Still a lot. but a far cry from the 194 pesos, under 194,000 pesos per month. And if it's a two income earner, then it is actually more achievable. And that's the reason why even back in the previous PDP, we were really promoting and advocating heavily for increasing the female labor force participation rate, because we know that that is also a key to the ambition. Now, but can you remember all those assumptions that we have to put in so that we can bring down this ambition, the cost of achieving the ambition? And that's actually what has been guiding us in crafting the Philippine Development Plan. First of all, we need to invest in priority sectors that actually have a direct impact on our people's aspirations. So we're talking about housing and urban development, okay, the construction sector, all this manufacturing of construction-related uh, materials. We need manufacturing, of course. You need connectivity, digital and physical. You need a very, very modern agriculture sector, thank you, which includes even the biotech. Tourism and allied services, we also want that. And like I said, sana medyo malapit lang. And financial services, let's have more competition also in financial services. We also need an enabling social policy. And this one, we have been doing this for every, what we call a vulnerable sector. Let's say this adolescent girl. What are the many things that can, go well with her? First of all, she goes to school, quality education, finishes school, and then gets into a decent employment. That. And then adult marriage, and also bears healthy children. Tapos, enjoy security of place, and then enjoys also work-life balance because of that work-life balance policies. And then my lifelong learning opportunities siya. In the end, she's able to achieve the demographic dividend. Now, what are the other things, that can go awry for this adolescent girl? First of all, child marriage or teenage pregnancy even. She leaves school because of that. And then repeat pregnancies kasi bata pa. Then could be child illness, there could be even death, maternal morbidity, and even mortality. If she can work, it can only be informal work. There's insecurity and displacement, and it will be a missed demographic dividend. But what we're saying is that, it doesn't have to be all the way like that and all the way bad, all the way good, all the way bad. No. If you have this enabling social policy in the middle, access to skilled birth attendants, you have health systems and good health systems, you have child health investments, etc., then even though they would, sometimes detour to this bad path, we can actually bring them back. And, back to that good path. Another is that with respect to education, really has to be quality education, not just access to education, but access to quality education, as also mentioned by Dr. Albert earlier. So we're talking about having the foundational literacies, competencies, and character. So this is actually what we need to do. So given that, yes, thank you. Given this ladder, what we need really is many more strategies that will provide them more ladder rungs so that they're able to move up that social ladder. For the poor, we need that ladder to just, take them, get them out of that poverty, okay? But make sure that they also have the social protection. That's why we have the 4Ps, for instance, that is conditioned on, that also provides for their human capital development. and other stuff. And we also need the other aspects in order to, provide them that means to be able to move up that ladder. And that is actually how you strengthen the middle class. Now, just to say that in the previous PDP, this is actually what we have said then, that it's really about laying the foundation for this ambition natin 2040. And we said then that there will be three pillars: malasakit, pagbabago, patuloy na pag-unlad. And for instance, strengthening the social fabric, this is actually about improving also the confidence, building the confidence in institutions. Pagbabago is more about increasing access to the opportunities, increasing the opportunities and then the access to opportunities. Patuloy na pag-unlad, this is really the first time that we had a chapter on science, technology, and innovation in the PDP. And actually it continued until the next PDP. Now, these are actually those foundational policies that we have put in place, programs and policies that actually, would make for improving or building those other in-between ladder rungs. But of course, there's the pandemic, and therefore what we did next was to come up with, okay, we know what is that life we want, the future we want, but what is the future that we do not want? And therefore, we also need to ensure that we come up with strategies so that we don't get to the future that we don't want. And we have these three: masakuna, distress and disasters; mabagal, slow to change; and then langit at lupa, wider inequalities. We have actually come up also with strategies so that we avoid this future that we do not want. Many of them are included in the NIASD, this is the National Innovation Agenda and Strategy document, and of course, this PDP. Now, this one is coming from Chandler Institute of Governance, which is based in Singapore, one of the thought leaders actively promoting actually, that we really need a big and a strong middle class. So they say that the middle class, which is fundamental to a market economy, embodies values like dedication, thrift, and prioritization of education. It's really because they know that it's education that will take them to that next level. So it's really important that we grow that middle class because it is the key to having a very, very well-educated population. But I would like you to see as well this ladder that they have actually come up with, where it begins with dreams and aspirations. And this is really about, strengthening the middle class as well. They say that it has to begin with that everyone should have an aspiration. That's how you grow. And then the skills and the core values. And then you have professional growth, the freedom to create, being an industry leader, and so on and so forth. And therefore, this is actually the statement now of our long-term developmental goals. What has been mentioned earlier is actually the first of those development agenda, which is that by 2040, the Philippines will be a prosperous, predominantly middle-class society where no one is poor. But we also want to bring in the other aspects, not just the economic aspects, but also the social, the cultural, institutional, etc. Our peoples are smart and innovative with high regard for sustainable development and quality of life. May malasakit. Our peoples will live long and productive lives and continue to nurture their gifts, talents, and passion, contribute to society. And our peoples will live in a high trust and caring society and proudly identify themselves as Filipinos. And this is actually what we mean by strengthening that middle class. Now, I will not have time to discuss the current PDP, but just to say that it's actually a PDP that is also geared towards the ambition, but also includes strategies so that we do not get to the future that we do not want. And this is that we say that it's really about transforming economic and social transformation, which is about digital transformation, improving connectivity, intensifying public-private partnerships, promoting servicification, establishing a dynamic innovation ecosystem, and then enhancing the role of LGUs as partners in development. And we think that this is really the key. This is really the key to, first of all, growing the middle class, and then next, to strengthen the middle class. So once again, thank you very much, and let's all be part of this growing and strengthening the middle class.
Wow, 194,000. Mahirap palang maging middle class. Thank you for that very rich presentation, Yusek Rose. Now let's proceed with our second panelist. I believe she's available online already. So our second panelist is Ms. Daniela Braun. Daniela is the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Country Director, Philippines since May 2023. In this capacity, she oversees the programs of Konrad Adenauer's oldest office in Asia. Previously, Daniela worked as policy advisor for international politics and security affairs at the Division Analysis and Consulting of KAS in Berlin. Before that, Daniela held different positions at the German Council on Foreign Relations, the German Bundestag, and the Berlin office of the German Marshall Fund. She holds a BA in Political Science from University of Bonn, MA from the Free University Berlin. She also studied in Warsaw at the American University, in Washington, D.C., and as Fox International Scholar at Yale University in New Haven. Thank you for joining us today. Daniela, you may begin your discussion.
Thank you so much. I hope I can be heard. So good morning, everyone. And first of all, I would like to apologize that I can't be there in person today with you. I'm still recovering from a pretty bad cold, so I decided it's better to stay here in order to not spread my germs to any one of you. But nonetheless, I'm excited to be part of the discussion, and I'm starting my presentation now. Next slide, please. So good governance is perhaps the single most important factor in eradicating poverty and promoting development. This is a quote of Kofi Annan, the former General Secretary of the UN. And it underlines quite nicely what I'm going to talk about, namely how important good governance is for economic development. I would like to present to you today how my organization, CAS Philippines, contributes to economic development through our different activities, mainly focused on good governance and democratic principles. So good governance is critical in helping to expand the Filipino middle class and thereby driving economic growth. Next slide, please. So this is the outline of my presentation. First, I would like to talk a little bit about the relationship of good governance and economic development. Second, I would like to emphasize the strategic value of the middle class, but I would also like to talk a little bit about the challenges we see from a governance standpoint in order to expand the middle class in the Philippines. And lastly, and this will be the bulk of my presentation, I would like to introduce you the work we do here in the Philippines. I would also like to thank the organizers so very much for having me this morning and putting this critical forum together. I would like to congratulate you in choosing the topic middle class. I come from a country, Germany, where the middle class is the majority of the population and where it's also like an important economic driver, we call it Mittelstand in German. So congratulations also for choosing the topic. But let me start with my first point. Next slide, please. The relationship between good governance and economic development. There is a lot of, back to the previous slide. Yes, thank you. So there is a lot of research out there on the linkages and development. And I don't want to go into too much detail here, but the The main finding is that these two go hand in hand. Good governance is not only a worthy goal in and of itself, it's also a means to achieve other outcomes, and this is mainly economic growth. So just to give you some of the examples of the linkages, so in poorly governed countries, high level of corruption leads to evasion of taxes that could have spent for productive government investments and social expenditure for the poor. Another example is that low administrative capacity of the state, along with weak accountability of service providers, imply that government expenditures in health, education, and infrastructure are not spent effectively. And the last example I would like to mention here is that good governance also induces private investment decisions, because you trust the state more that it will, that there is a strong, strong governance, that there is also a just judiciary system. So private investors are also more inclined to invest in these states. I come now to my second point. So next slide, please. We heard already a lot about the strategic value of the middle class, so I will be brief about it and just a couple of thoughts. So the Filipino middle class stands at the heart of the country's economic engine. They are driving consumer demand across sectors, but they are not only important for economics, they are also very important when it comes to politics, because they are a stabilizing force, bridging socioeconomic divides and bolstering political stability. It's the backbone of inclusive national development. They contribute to tax revenues, they're boosting savings and investing in the future through education and healthcare. Some of the governance challenges we see when it comes to expanding the middle class. So first, corruption. Corruption is a persistent scourge in the Philippines, which siphons off funds meant for essential services like education, healthcare, or infrastructure. This misappropriation exacerbates the cost of living and limits access to quality services critical for the middle class. Second, low administrative capacity and bureaucratic inefficiencies. Bureaucratic inefficiencies and red tape further hamper the middle class. In particularly those who are managing small businesses and accessing public services. These hurdles inflate operational costs and erode economic mobility as well as quality of life. A third challenge I would like to mention here is a weak judicial system. A sluggish and biased judicial system erodes trust in legal institutions, particularly concerning property rights, contract enforcement, and business disputes. This uncertainty discourages investments and entrepreneurship within the middle class. And I believe one of the root causes or underlying reasons why it's so difficult to push for comprehensive economic and political reforms is the fact that in the Philippines, political dynasties have a lot of influence. So the system, the political system is in the hand of a couple of families, and there's not a lot of interest to push for comprehensive reforms in order to tackle these challenges in a substantive manner. Next slide, please. So who are we? Who is the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Philippines? We are a German political foundation. We are active in Germany, but also in more than 100 countries worldwide. We bear the name of the first Chancellor of Germany, Konrad Adenauer, and we are closely affiliated with the Christian Democratic Party of Germany. But affiliated means that we are sharing principles and values, but we are also independent. Our principles are the promotion of liberal democracy, social market economy, peace, and freedom. In the Philippines, we are active since 60 years, and it's the oldest office in Asia for us. Here we are an international think tank, and we are passionate about bringing politics closer to the Filipino people because we believe that democracy has really the power to shape the future of the nation. So we are really passionate about to talk about politics with everyone and bring everyone into the conversation. We do a lot of different activities together with various Filipino partner organizations from the academe, from civil society, but also from the government. And our activities include, for example, trainings. We publish research products, knowledge products, and we also organize events, small workshops, but also bigger public fora. In terms of the topics we are working on, there are mainly 4 pillars. And the first is our bread and butter, democracy promotion and good governance. Second is inclusive economic development. Third is youth empowerment. And fourth is security and innovation. And I'm going to introduce all of these 4 pillars to you because I think they all contribute to economic development in the Philippines. So first slide, next slide, please. So our first pillar, democracy and good governance, our bread and butter. Here we focus on capacity training and leadership programs for local officials. We believe this is vital to enhance their ability to oversee public resources, engage with middle-class communities, and execute projects that stimulate local economies. These programs emphasize good governance practices, including financial management, strategic planning, community engagement, and also the integration of technology into governance. So directly benefiting citizens by improving the quality of local governance and services. A second focus for our work under democracy and good governance is really to empower citizens and civil society, including businesses, to take part in democratic practices. We think that, for example, enhancing the role of barangay assemblies or creating digital platforms on national issues democratizes decision-making. This approach ensures that policy are closely aligned with the needs and aspirations of the middle class, empowering them to take an active role in their communities, but also in national discussions. A third focus for us is empowering LGUs. We want to empower LGUs with greater control over resources and decision-making, which allows also for policies which are better aligned with the needs of the people on the ground. This includes, for example, devolving fiscal powers, enhancing revenue generation capacity, and providing also the necessary tools and training to manage local projects more effectively. Next slide, please. So these are some of the projects we conducted this year under our first pillar. So the Konrad Adenauer Medal of Excellence, for example, we had it earlier this year in February, and we awarded 4 outstanding Filipinos for their work. We awarded 1 medal also for good local governance, and the awardee was Mayor Benjamin Magalang from Baguio, who is also known for good local governance. By this event, or with the awarding of the medal, we wanted to honor best performing individuals, but we also want to inspire and motivate others to follow their example. Another initiative we had earlier, or no, actually last week, last Sunday, was Share Ko Lang, a deliberative dialogue format. We brought in ordinary Filipinos to discuss with them about their aspirations for their communities. We had it together with Dr. Nicole Curado, who is a leading expert on deliberative democracy. And this program will also help us to inform our other activities because we want to use the results for informing our other programs as well. Another activity I would like to highlight here is together with Christian Esguerra and Facts First. We have a small or short documentary on corruption in the Philippines. And another very important program is the LEGO, the Leadership and Governance Fellowship Program for mayors. We conducted together with the Jesse M. Robredo Foundation. And yeah, this is fellowship program for mayors on good governance practices and leadership. I would also like to highlight that CAS has a long standing footprint in BARM. We work together with the Institute for Autonomy and Governance in Cotabato, surrounding the transition process and the upcoming elections and the peace process. So CAS has also invested heavily in BARM and regional autonomy. Next slide, please. Inclusive economic development. Our priorities under this pillars are first to promote SMEs competitiveness. We want to build a resilient middle class by also providing support for middle class entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises. This includes policy advocacy for progressive taxation, anti-monopoly regulations, and reducing bureaucratic barriers that hinder growth for the middle class. Another priority for us is to support digital transformation and innovations such as generative AI. We want to make sure that these innovations also provide opportunities for the middle class. This involves, for example, reskilling programs, digital literacy, crafting policies that protect middle-class jobs, while, of course, also encouraging new economic activities, but also promoting AI applications that enhance public service. Excuse me. Another focus under inclusive economic development for CAS Philippines as an international think tank is also to leverage emerging global trends. So in an era of geoeconomics, understanding the interplay between economic and geopolitical forces is crucial for securing a resilient middle class. So, for example, economic de-risking, the push to diversify supply chains and reduce economic dependencies presents both challenges but also opportunities for the Philippine middle class. Next slide, please. Some activities or programs of us we are having under our second pillar, inclusive economic development, are, for example, we work closely together with AIM Rizalino S. Navarro Policy Center. They work mainly on SME competitiveness. They hold workshops or stakeholder consultations and in events to promote digital skills and help middle-class entrepreneurs to innovate and scale their businesses. Another activity which is upcoming end of October this year is our CAS Solutions Conference. This is an annual event we are having, and as the name already suggests, we are focusing on solutions. This year we are talking about AI and the opportunities AI presents to us, to the Philippines, to the middle class as well. We are also supporting the 6th Katipunan Conference later this year. This is an academic conference which will also further look at the intersection of national security and economic resilience. And I would, of course, also like to mention our cooperation with PIDS. We work together with PIDS to publish some policy brief on RCEP, the Regional Cooperation Economic Partnership. Next slide, please. Another important pillar for us is our work in youth empowerment. So to empower a new generation of political leaders with democratic and good governance principles and really capacitate them with the necessary skills to influence political and economic developments is a critical part for us. We provide trainings for young individuals to promote their leadership skills and also to encourage them to take greater responsibilities in their communities, organizations, or also to run for public office. Some programs here are mainly our own in-house young leadership program, the AYLP, Adenauer Young Leaders Program. We also have a training initiative with JMRF for the Baguio Youth for Good Governance. And earlier this year, we partnered with San Pedro City on empowering youth leaders for their ESCI officials. Next slide, please. Security and innovation. Probably you're asking me now why I'm talking also about security. So I believe security and stability are a very important prerequisite for economic development. So given that geopolitical tensions in this part of the world are growing, looking to the West Philippine Sea and China's increasing aggressive behavior, I think there are growing tensions, and we have to talk about it and also look for solutions. And with our activities, CAS Philippines really wants to increase regional cooperation, but also cooperation between the Philippines and Germany or Europe to protect the rules-based international order and help to strengthen stability and security in this part of the world. Some activities here. So we are partnering with the Pacific Forum later this year, and in the conference Manila Dialogue on the South China Sea, which is mainly about maritime security. We partnered with Facts Asia on a workshop on Europe-Philippine cooperation in defense modernization. And earlier this year, we had our first ever SEAL, Security Expert Network Philippines. This was an initiative to bring in 3 young security fellows from the Philippines to mentor them, to provide them with resources, and they are going to write impactful policy papers for us on critical security issues, also providing some guidance how to act on these security challenges. I'm coming now to the end of my presentation. Time is already up. I gave you a broad overview on our activities, but just to summarize it a little bit, I believe, or we as an organization believe, that good governance is really critical to tackle the challenges for expanding the middle class as the country's economic engine. We are very much looking forward to work with our partners to contribute to economic development for all Filipinos. So last slide. Thank you very much. Dankeschön and maraming salamat.
Thank you, Daniela. Let us move on to our third panelist, Attorney Marco A.L.V. Sardillo III. Marco is Executive Director of Asia Society Philippines. He leads the organization in collaboration with the Board of Trustees, aiming to position ASP as the ASEAN-focused center with a development-oriented trajectory. A seasoned development practitioner, he has consulted for UNDP Philippines, the Asia Foundation, and ADB, and serves as a pro bono advisor to NGOs focused on social justice. Previously, as administrator of the Intramuros administration, he led it to become the first organization outside Europe to receive a Premio Patrimonio from the UNESCO cities of Spain. Marco holds degrees from Ateneo de Manila, the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, and the London School of Economics. We are honored to have you with us, Marco. You may begin the discussion. Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr., President of PIDS, Dr. Marife Ballesteros, Vice President of PIDS, the co-authors of the paper Wealth Creation for Expanding the Middle Class in the Philippines, Doctors Jose Ramon Albert, Ruel Briones, and John Paul Rivera. My fellow panelists, NEDA Undersecretary Rosemarie Edillon, and Dr. Daniela Braun, Country Director of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Our friends from PIDS and the DPRM Steering Committee, former colleagues and fellow workers in government, friends in the media especially, and our guests and fellow participants both present here today and online. And thank you so much for joining us despite the weather this morning. My presentation is entitled A Fertile Middle Ground. These are just humble reflections and responses to the paper that I mentioned earlier, authored by the co-authors I specifically mentioned as well. My presentation is structured as follows. Two broad parts. The first part are personal reflections or a reading of the paper, including some areas or pauses for reflection, and also some responses to points raised in the paper. And the second part, I will introduce our organization, the Society of Philippines, and the orientation that we've taken for ourselves, and perhaps even just a snapshot of some of the results that we managed to produce in the past year that I've been with the Society of Philippines and as a development practitioner. So allow me to begin with a short self-introduction. These are some of my contexts and circumstances, apart from what's already been mentioned by our esteemed moderator. Also, just to help you understand where I'm coming from, the biases that might color my interests. At the same time, I was really very excited to participate and accept the invitation this morning because the cause and the issues concerning our middle class, and I do self-identify as a member of this class, is something that concerns me very deeply and personally. It stems from way back when I used to work in the public sector, having conversations with then Tourism Secretary Ramon Jimenez Jr., including some of the issues that may have colored or even shaped the outcome of the 2016 elections, the new middle class issues that came about, the issues that agitated us relating, for example, to the breakdown of our MRTs or the traffic, etc. At the same time, I also recall, being a policymaker, I may share with you. So one of the main concerns that we had then for Intramuros was actually our informal sectors. And while the paper takes on the tact of looking at expanding opportunities for our middle class through wealth generation, modesty aside, way back 2014, we're also looking at it from the paradigm of wealth and asset generation for our urban poor settlers in Intramuros. At the time, inspired by the Philippine government's experiment on conditional cash transfers, we wanted and we tried to come up with what was then could have been the biggest housing policy experiment of the government, linking human development conditions and conditionalities to large asset transfers in the form of socialized housing and not low-cost housing. At the time, before I stepped down from office, before change came, we were able to get about 410 million pesos worth of budget, and we're looking to work with development partners, trying to reframe the conversations about housing. And I'm happy that despite the fact that I'm no longer in the public sector, years later, I have seen some papers that tend to validate the importance of large asset transfers that are put in place or transferred to low-income families and households as a way to really elevate them or raise them out of the poverty line. And now I proceed as a consumer of policy research and as a development worker. And that's why perhaps I take a different tack from the esteemed panelists who went before me, and mindful of the audience that we have now, especially our friends in the media, your ability and potential to amplify and cascade the message out into the public, and our audience, enthusiasts, students, and policy practitioners. What I have done in this presentation is to do a bit of a reading of the paper, the discussion paper, the working paper on expanding the middle class through wealth creation. And so with these disclosures aside, allow me to perhaps point out, by way of an invitation to you, point out some salient points that I've found from the paper of our esteemed authors. If you look at the paper, and I have read it several times with excitement and gusto, I appreciate that it sets out its agenda as a paradigm really for the middle class as opposed to a middle class agenda. And it is situated within, as our esteemed USEC pointed out, it is within the context of our Ambition 2040 as well. And I've read it as a complementary document. The need to reinforce our middle class and to expand it through wealth generation is very, very important, an important aspect of what I picked up to be an important agenda that is set out by this paper. So in wealth creation for expanding the middle class, and I do invite the members of the audience today to do read that paper. You look at the paper sets out the context, the global megatrends, the risks, the vulnerabilities that we are exposed to, while at the same time highlighting the possibilities for our country and the negative challenges that we are facing. And it ends with policy prescriptions. Like any other good paper, it ends with policy prescriptions and directions. So what are these points? And earlier, our presenters already picked up some of them. One is a difficulty in terms of even identifying who are the middle class. There is, and there seems to be an inherent tension from members of the middle class themselves. Like, I always feel conflicted about my standing as a member of the middle class. And that's the meta layer to the fact that we do have the definitional challenges with difficulties, even constructing a common or shared paradigm for the middle class. Meron po akong kasabihan, sabi ko nga, madalas naririnig natin so we can invest that, people tend to argue whether or not the glass is half empty or half full. But before we do, I think it's also important that we actually utter the points of agreement. That number one, there is a glass, it contains something before we argue. And number three, more importantly, that we can all actually see by being able to utter that. And that difficulty, I think, is something that the paper has managed to achieve to help us and situate us in one common framework to an understanding of what we're actually talking about when we talk about the middle class. And towards the end, it does, and I will no longer belabor the point because it has been already presented by one of the lead authors, the prescriptions in the paper on how to actually expand the wealth of our middle class. But more importantly, and this is a message that I do address to our members of the media, especially here present, and those who are watching. We are now in the Development Policy Research Month. And when I say I am an avid consumer of development policy research, that means that I would forgo a night out just to be able to read a paper. Mga kaibigan po sa media, napakalaking bagay na tayo ay tumutulong din sa ating mga kasamahan sa kapatid sa gobyerno, sa public sector, pagdating sa ganitong mga usapin. And part of it is actually grounding ourselves in the research that is out there, the evidence that our government actually produces, the wealth of information and insights that they bring to the table. The literature review performed by our authors is a wellspring of information and insights. The implications of our middle class, which I will no longer go through, but I invite you to browse through. The aspect that there is a tendency, for example, that when you have a larger middle class, then you also have a tendency for higher growth in income, or even the potential for better institutions and stronger social cohesion. Or as demonstrated or at least intuited by authors such as Asimoglu, the potential that the middle class can actually influence politicians. Although that is a point that I will pick up again later. As development practitioners, we often ask, while we've answered the question of who or what, the question always is development for whom? And so the aspect here, and this is where I do take on the role of perhaps a bit of a critical reader with the kind indulgence of the authors of the paper. And this is how I hope and encourage our audience to also engage in these kinds of materials and research, to take on a critical perspective as we consume them in the hope of disseminating them to the public. So, number one, I do feel that perhaps there is potential because this paper truly is, and this is my honest appreciation of the paper from. It's a very well-written paper. It's a very good paper, and how I wish more people would actually read it. And I do hope, and I do see the potential for perhaps unpacking it further, looking at potential for translating it, or maybe even from a storytelling perspective. Why do I say this? Because there is a meta and self-reflexive aspect or layer, the agenda that you set out for yourselves. The awareness of our class and class consciousness, especially given what I've observed, for example, in social media, where there tends to be social tension or class tension, I think, or even some of the observations of our authors, I think if more of us were aware of what is at stake when we talk about the middle class, then maybe we'll actually start taking these issues more seriously as well. So what now? What else can we do? And perhaps some humble suggestions to the authors. Number one, as I already alluded to, perhaps there are still issues here that are for further unpacking and interrogation. There might be dimensions and nuances in situations of the specific Filipino middle class. If we look at the survey of literature, say of Asimoglu, who talks about the potential or ability of the middle class to influence politicians, it might be quite the opposite case in our context. Some of my friends who had to suffer as well, and I suppose we all suffered through the pandemic, it was the middle class who actually felt the most marginalized. Hashtag paano naman kami. Because while our politicians, the assumption is the oligarchs are already invested in them, and they are heavily invested as well in looking after the poor, it's the middle class that are often left to our own devices. And so I do urge and perhaps make that humble suggestion too. Third, as pointed out earlier, there are implications as far as this paper is concerned. There's a 3-paragraph section that talks about the impact of COVID as far as our middle class. And that number, that figure that dropped by about 4 or 5%. It would be interesting to understand and unpack this further. There might be other dimensions apart from the COVID or the pandemic. And I do wonder, for example, the implications, as pointed out by Yusek Edillon earlier, a big part of our definition of what it means to be poor has to do and is correlated with our notion of the family. The family and the notion of Filipino family is so important, it is in our constitution. And as we have seen, and especially in this paper, a lot of our households, almost every household, in fact, has an OFW in their family. The complexion of the Filipino family is therefore, or maybe, this is a conjecture, perhaps changing as well. With parents having to leave the country, grandparents having to look after the children. Ano nga po ba talaga ang nangyayari at ibig sabihin pag tinutukoy pa natin ang Pilipinong pamilya? Or perhaps, and this is influenced by my recent return to grad school, perhaps there are aspects of the Filipino precariat or the precariat class. What are we talking about when we talk about the Filipino middle class? The people who are at risk of losing our core rights, or whose political power is actually slowly being eroded. And so these are just some of the humble points and observations which I offer to our authors, and really on a self-reflexive note, on a similar vein, I encourage our readers to do the same. When we engage and consume these kinds of researches, napakarami at napakaganda po kasi ng mga puntong ilinalabas ng ating mga institusyon katulad ng PIDS, DAP. There's a wellspring and wealth of research out there, and it's up to us to actually consume it. And the last thing that I note from this paper is really an invitation, because beyond the investigation, beyond the points that were raised, there was an invitation that invites all the stakeholders and members of society. They humbly acknowledge that it will take more than just government or bold leadership. It will have to involve civil society and other stakeholders to actually participate in this effort of generating more wealth for the middle class. And at this juncture, allow me to also respond by introducing our organization. E-Society Philippines is a part of a global network of centers. We navigate shared futures around the themes of sustainability, technology, arts and culture, policy and business, and education. Our trustees comprise some of the leaders of industry in the Philippines. We are chaired by Doris Magsasayho. Our two co-vice chairpersons are Myla Villanueva and Fernando Zobel de Ayala, and the list goes on as far as the leaders of industry are concerned. When I came on board last year, part of the mission and purpose that I pitched to our trustees, and we have since embraced by way of direction and ambition, is to position ourselves as not only the ASEAN focus center, but also one with a more development-oriented trajectory. And if you will indulge me, one thing that I've learned from engaging with the leaders of industry, so the country's 1%ers or perhaps even 1% of the 1%. One is the value of social capital. The fact that this organization has a potential to be a good convener, bridging the gap and connecting these 1%ers with the underprivileged and the marginalized. And that there is a potential really for collective social, political, and economic capital, and making sure that these 1%ers are also conscientized to actually have a deeper concern for issues that matter in society. And that means these networks and relationships, in fact, do matter. If you will indulge me further, just 1 or 2 minutes, one of the projects that we've embarked upon, which is quite surprising for some of the organizations that we worked with in the past, we have a collaboration now with USAID Catalyze. It is a program that is helping to work with the 4P family beneficiaries, specifically senior high school students who are no longer able to move on or graduate into college or to seek a formal education. This promotes learners who are skilled, healthy, and engaged. Skilled because we try to provide them with skills and training and core life skills. Healthy because there is a dimension for sexual health education, as well as mental health and bodily health. And also engaged. We try to connect them as well to our network for placement opportunities and reskilling opportunities. All this to say that really for organizations such as ourselves, and we are an atypical NGO or foundation, because in the past, people often or tend to associate a Society Philippines just with arts and culture, which is an agenda that is important. But there is room to move towards development. There's always room to talk about and situate these efforts within the context of development. In this sense, we have seen at least the potential for organizations such as ourselves for agenda setting and trying to cascade and make sure that these points are sufficiently mainstreamed and given a platform, and to mobilize these resources and to make connections and to connect the dots in order to build and paint that bigger picture. That is it. And maraming salamat po. And again, I thank the authors and I thank you for your time. We are just an email away. And on a personal note, I encourage all of you, again, consume the research. Basahin po natin. There's evidence out there. There are insights out there. And I think it's on our hands. It's our obligation to actually put them to good use. But at the very least, starting with the first task, to read them. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Marco. So as you're taking your seat on the stage, I'd also like to invite Toots, Yusek Rose, and JP, a member of the steering committee, to join you here as panelists. We will soon have our Q&A, but before that, may I request our lead author first, Toots, as followed by JP, to react to the panel discussion.
Well, let me just thank our discussants for their views about the background paper. The reason why we every year we're trying to make sure that we try to reflect about where should the country really be going. I mean, that's exactly what the PIDS has always tried to do, to think long term. And because of that, we started off really thinking first, rethinking the ambition 2040, where it's always easy for us to forget whatever plans that we've made back in 2015, but that was something that we started as a country, and we congratulate NEDA for taking the lead on this. And again, we would like to thank all our discussants for giving their own respective views on the importance, particularly of the middle class. And we certainly agree with some of the points raised, including even the point that sometimes, unfortunately, the middle class, instead of becoming the driver even of political discussions, we tend to become now the ones being influenced rather than the ones influencing. We hope members of the media indeed, as pointed out by Marco, will read the background paper because it does provide a lot of things to reflect on. We've been talking about I mean, I'm glad Yusek Rose had pointed out that they already started with former President Joseph Yap uh, in a paper, an academic exercise years ago, way ahead of us. But now that Yusek Rose is very focused on NEDA, I don't think she has enough time to do much research. But nonetheless, the people like us who have a lot more time, we have been focusing on things that we think will be important for the country to consider. And one of them is now that, it's always easy to keep talking about the poor, the poor, the poor. But indeed, as pointed out by Marco, the middle class felt left behind to some extent. So why do we, and in fact, I was kind of surprised, well, partly surprised over the years when we started our thresholds on the middle class, that those thresholds became very viral on social media. Many times there were people who saying, ay, hindi pala ako middle class, lower income pala ako, ganyan. No? And people were trying to associate themselves with all of these thresholds as a starting point to uncover where they are, because people always want to say, am I an average person? Am I a median voter? Thank you.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. And I would like to emphasize on a slide presented by Yusek Edillon earlier regarding the ladder that she showed us. And it's also very important for us to talk about more ways to increase the steps. Sabi nga nila, no, malayo na, pero malayo pa. And adding to those steps would actually help our middle class form a greater part in economic growth and development. And in doing so, part of those additional steps, we can also talk about the bricolage, digitalization. Bricolage is para-paraan, and a lot of the middle class are very, very into that, no? Paparaanan natin kung ano man yung meron tayo para ma-augment, no, yung ating mga kulangan pa in order for us to live prosperous in this generation. Also, it's very important that we also harness the gig economy so that our middle class would have more opportunities to create more income for themselves so that they live according to the ambition goals. And also, it is very important for the middle class to be given the opportunity to own the ownership of that movement in the distribution from poverty to non-poor. And by giving them that ownership, they are able to be more sustainable in keeping that status of being part of the middle class, upper middle class, and eventually to totally escaping the chains of poverty. And one of the things that we can consider in allowing them to own that shift towards the middle class is for them to have this financial literacy. And a lot of discussion, a lot of forum has already looked into how financial literacy would be able to help the middle class own that shift. And when we say financial literacy, one of the discussion there is to help the middle class form more capital, get more assets rather than getting more liabilities. So those concepts of personal finance would be able to help the middle class also to own that movement alongside the support that government has been giving to everyone, so that we are all able to sustain that shift of the distribution towards lower poverty incidence. Maraming salamat po.
Thanks, Stutz and JP. I'm actually also one of the authors of that study, pero I will not belabor the point anymore, except to add that if you want to help USEC Rose's target of 6 to 7% growth, you individually should make sure your income grows 6 to 7% at least this year. If it's not, you're a drag, sorry. No, really. Everybody's by taking care of yourself, you're actually taking care of the economy as a whole. So we will now move to the Q&A session. So please approach the mic for your question. Please don't forget to include your name and your affiliation. You may also indicate which of our panelists you are directing your question to, including, I believe, Daniela, who is still online with us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tin from the DPH. Thank you so much for this important event. Basically, this question goes for anyone. I wonder if do we have a data as to the state of our middle class, or how much percentage do we have for as a middle class? Oh, yeah, so that's my question. What is the state of our middle class right now, as per your database? If we have, I have a question. That's my first question. Thank you. For anyone.
All right. Maybe Toots.
Yeah, the estimate we have as of 2021 is around 40%. It was already around 44, 45% in 2018, but because of the pandemic in 2021, when poverty went down, the middle class, when poverty went up, the middle class went down in terms of share. But because poverty reduced in 2023, though we do not have the micro data, so we cannot give you the estimates yet. But my guess is it might have gotten somewhere around 45% again. Maybe it's slightly higher even, no? Possibly. But because the Ambition 2040 says we would like to be a predominantly middle class society. So we're still below the 50% threshold. We're still not predominant. So the question is, what do we do to make sure that we grow? And that's why I think the conversation really should be across society. It can't be just government planning, the private sector alone doing its job. We have to get our act together. I mean, that's the whole point of the paper, that we have to start really thinking on strategies, because the reality is, I mean, sad to say, I mean, forgive me to my friends from NEDA. From time to time, when I talk with development partners, I hear people always comparing no longer CMNB, but CMNP. You know, I mean, of course, it's not fair, but to some extent, you can understand, because Vietnam seems to have really done a very good job in improving many things over the years. So, and if you think of a lot of many social indicators, we're not quite doing as well as we could be. But part of it is, I think, because we don't have, I mean, we have a lot of plans, but as usual, the implementation deficits are what always bring us down, or we're not quite within what we want. So we hope that NEDA will be really successful in trying to put a lot more strategies together with local governments, with the entire national government. But beyond government, it must be the private sector also, because working with us, because the private sector is the engine of the economy. And so with all the people in the households. Thank you.
How do we categorize middle class?
Middle class, by our definition, is something like, for a family of 5, you have about income between 25,000 to around 150,000, say, for a family of 5. Yes, please.
I mean, a lot of people are not, they're not, what they call this, they're not declaring their income. Basically, we have a lot of, mostly, but how do we, they can be categorized as middle class. Actually.
Yeah. Well, we understand that, when the PSA, the Philippine Statistics Authority, does its surveys, people should be honest, and people do not necessarily report their income. But if they are reporting their income accurately during surveys, then and if you know what your income is, because sometimes the reporting might be an issue of memory, because people forget unless you're a regular wage earner. So that's the hard part, I think, in fairness to a lot of other people who may not necessarily be wanting not to divulge information, but part of it might be because of the nature of their job, also difficulties of reporting your income. So, but roughly that's just a benchmark. And I mean, the private sector actually loved our thresholds even long ago. I know even Ayala Land, for instance, they asked me for a presentation years ago about what my definition was, and they said that the definition seems to be jibing with what they're doing for market segmentation and really targeting when you go to the malls and you start seeing people from Ayala Land, talking with you. It's partly because they have an idea of what your income should be and how your clothes, how you dress yourself up and things like that.
On my left side, please go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Susan Amoroso, onboard shipping and travel. My question is for all of you. What has the maritime sector contributed to the growth of the middle class?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I was given a heads up earlier that this will be asked. Anyway, our maritime industry is actually, of course, kind of well known in the world. We produce many of our the best seafarers. So this is actually the one where you have the sea-based OFWs. And so if you go by that study of Dr. Boots and Etal, then definitely it's actually a big reason for the emergence of the middle class. Now, in terms of the industry itself, and how it relates to economic growth in the country, apart from of course producing the seafarers, giving them good jobs, good pay, etc. What we actually want for the maritime industry is to be able to provide quality logistics services as well. Logistics and transport services. So as you know, we're an archipelago, and obviously a lot of trade has to happen, sea-based, sea-based trade, and therefore we would want a very competitive maritime industry, a modern maritime industry, a safe maritime industry. And over time, actually, as the economy develops, as we become an upper middle income, upper income, etc., as the middle class grows, we would like to see the maritime industry also to evolve and to offer other services like cruise, cruise services. Because over time, this will be so that Filipinos won't have to go abroad just to be able to get on a cruise ship. Parang ang dami-dami naman pwedeng punta sa Pilipinas. So it's really about that. So for now, it's really about we actually would like to also allow the maritime industry, including the peripheral services, because it has actually made for us, gained for us a reputation for producing the best seafarers in the world. But over time, we would like to see that our own maritime industry be able to provide more services.
Yes, please.
So good morning, George Puig for Manila Stories. I might have like 3 to 4 questions. So one of my questions about yung presentation ni Dr. Edillon, yung investment priority sector. So there's in your presentation, there's connectivity. So do you think if the local government or NGOs will go for like green transport or personal mobility, will that help the poverty line push to the middle class?
Please complete your questions, then we'll take them all together.
Oh yeah, sige. So that's the first question. Then the second question is about kasi mostly the presentation was about financial classes, about family. How about yung mga like mga single, or how do you categorize them to middle class or poverty line? Kasi di ba mostly family na kasi ang sticks. So paano yung mga single? Kasi there's already like people who doesn't want to be terminated. And then there's another like third question is about there's a movement now about underconsumption. Will that also help for the poverty to go up to the middle class? Underconsumption movement. So spending less, siguro living near where you work, so instead of spending money for transport, so you just walk. So basically, like maybe Quezon City is moving towards walkable city. And then the fourth question is, yeah, siguro yun lang, 3 questions.
And for whom is the third question?
Yung,
For whom?
any of them.
Okay. Okay. Please. First.
Ako muna. Yung sa your the first question has to do with connectivity, and your question is if the LGUs would
Yung mga green transport, like mobility, personal mobility. Kasi you mentioned instead of spending like
yeah
25,000 for transport, naging 5,000.
correct. Yes, actually that's part of it. In fact, even us at NEDA, no, we have supported 2 or 3 studies looking at walkability. Let's say walkability in Baguio, walkability in Cebu City, and we're also looking at urban carrying capacity studies. So these are things that we actually are interested in as well. And by connectivity there, we just don't mean, especially if we're talking about the current PDP, it's not just physical connectivity, but also digital connectivity. So it's really about, that part of the ambition, which is matatag, yung having the work-life balance, time with friends, etc., and yet still having that maginhawa. So ibig sabihin, you should be able to bond with your friends at the same time that you're able to work, and therefore that actually means you need to have very, very good connectivity, either physical or digital. Now, with respect to the green transport, I think that's also related to your third question. With respect to the green transport, I think it's really about addressing other objectives, which is also I think also akin to the ambition, like for instance, healthy settings, health promotion, because it's all again part of the ambition and the panatag is about having healthy and long and healthy lives. So that's also part of it, and of course including the climate action. So that's still part of it. In terms of you were mentioning about underconsumption. Of course, if they did not spend, so the converse is that they were saving, and therefore, if they were saving, therefore, we would have many more funds to for capital, for investments, and it will still be actually growth promoting for as long as we have an open economy. So maraming mga permutations, but it's in and of itself actually the green transport would be a good thing for us, and because it addresses many other objectives, and especially also the goals of the ambition.
Any other rejoinders from the panelists?
Maybe I would like to augment on the discussion of the underconsumption. Yes, while there would be consumers who would be lowering down their spending on a particular item, we all know that the Filipino consumers do this thing called purchase priority, wherein the reduction in one item, they would just transfer it to another one, such as travel. Yusek was telling earlier that they would most likely, with the amount that they have, would most likely travel to nearby destinations within their household, But then because of the reduction in one item, they would now be able to afford to be able to travel to farther destination, or even spend more on that particular destination because of the savings that they're able to generate from another item.
All right, from the left side, my left side, please.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for your presentations. This question is actually,
Name and affiliation, please.
yes, thank you. I'm Ms. Cherry Holgado from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources from the Policy and Planning Service, Policy Studies Division. So actually, my question is addressed to anyone. So with the inflation rate that we are currently facing, so based on your point of views, how do we strike a balance between economic development and environmental sustainability while we aim for the upward mobility for the middle classes? Thank you.
Anyone from the panel?
Yeah, just to say as well that we have just released the August August inflation rate, and it's at 3.3%, and the year to date it's at 3.6%. So very well within the target. We actually would like to, of course, commend the president for very decisive actions really to bring down inflation. Now, you're asking about economic growth and then environmental sustainability. As you would know, one of the goals in the SDG is really, or strategies in the SDG, is really to decouple the environmental degradation with, what happens to the environment and what happens to the economy. So we think that there's actually, that sweet spot where we can have economic growth, but not at the expense of the environment. It's still something that is an ongoing discussion. I think right now we're having there is a forum at the Marco Polo yata. I'm supposed to go there, but anyway, it's on the green economy. So it's something that that can be done, but like I said, it's really about yung sabi kanina ni Dr. Mark, priority spending. There really are ways in which we call it choice editing. In fact, back in 2019, yeah, just before the pandemic, we came up with a PAP for SCP, Philippine Action Plan for Sustainable Consumption and Production, where we have identified the 4 nodes of action, including policy, including the infrastructure, the of course the research, and then the IEC that's needed, the education and the communication. And the education and communication, of course, will benefit also from the research. Will actually, the objective there is to edit your choices. So that you just have to, of course, the policy as well. The policy is, of course, that very potent force to edit your choice so that, you get to choose the more environmentally sustainable one. Just to say that for many of the things that we are using now, actually, there actually are sustainable alternatives. So it's really about just making sure that we are able to produce it just as efficiently and or even more efficiently than the more harmful ones. But yeah, so it's still a work in progress, and of course, DNR is spearheading that. But again, it's really about that balancing act. But in the end, that's what we want to do, to decouple that economic growth and environment.
Oh, okay, from this side again. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Can you explain us, ma'am, sir, the role of insurance in safeguarding the erosion of the wealth of our middle class?
For whom is with that question?
To all of them.
And the name and designation, please.
Taguyod PH, I'm Henry Estipona.
Thank you. insurance?
Maybe I can take the first crack to that question. Well, regarding insurance, this instrument would be very helpful for our middle class to be able to protect their purchasing power, protect their income. However, in this modern day, there's now this component of insurance wherein the middle class or anyone who owns an insurance are now also allowed to be able to invest because of the existence of the variable unit life insurances compared to the traditional term insurance. In the existence of this newer, more progressive insurance instruments allow our middle class to be able to participate not only in securing an insurance for their families, for their dependents, but also to be able to take advantage of the benefits we call living benefits for them to be able to participate in the capital formation of the economy. Therefore, as time progresses, I believe there will be more advanced insurance instruments that would be developed by our insurance companies that would allow our middle class to be more proactive in taking care of their wealth.
Prof, may I just add just one quick note about the question? I definitely insurance is very important as far as social safety nets are concerned. The middle classes we've seen during the pandemic, suddenly it doesn't respect how wealthy you are. And it was an ongoing conversation, even albeit anecdotal, when you talk about some of the members of that segment, which you call middle class. There are people who are just a serious illness away from falling back or from falling below the middle class. So that's why it is very, very important. And I think that's why also the financial instruments like VUS are also very important, because when you go back to the point of expanding the middle class, wealth creation, expanding them by giving them financial instruments or asset classes for which they can invest to expand their wealth, while being mindful of their needs for social safety nets. I think that's very important. Thank you.
Very, very quick one as well.
Please.
Yeah, so just in the literature on risk and vulnerability, the insight there that we get is that many of us are actually not immune to the risks, especially they can come from so many quarters. And the idea of insurance is that it actually mitigates the impact of this risk. Because if you do not have this insurance, then chances are, then you get to draw down on other coping mechanisms. For instance, your savings, or you can borrow from your relatives. But the problem actually becomes to get magnified if suddenly you will have to draw down on your productive assets. Then it becomes even more difficult to recover from that shock or from that risk, and that is actually the essence of the insurance. So you are able to pull the risk so that, with respect, if you get hit by that shock, that risk, then it will not be as difficult to recover from it, and then just go back to your pre-shock condition.
Okay, please, on this side.
Morning.
Name and affiliation, please.
Yes. Good morning. This is Emmanuel Provino. I'm a writer for Inquirer. There are two aspects of concerns that I'd like to be addressed by our prestigious speakers. One is for the Asia Society of the Philippines, and among other, and from any of the other three. It's about the financial acquisition of rather grants for our middle class who are very, very talented. I'm very fortunate that I was able to attend the creative industry that Representative Devenesha just about 2 days ago, and then I was at the DW yesterday. I think that's supposed to be Marco Polo, with Undersecretary. I was able also to attend, and how much they're actually rendering so much activities and assistance to our poor people. But our concern now is, of course, that happen to belong to the middle class. And my first concern is the financial literacy or other grants that we can avail of as artists or creative people. So I'm addressing now Mr. Marco Sadillo, the third, yes, for the Asia Society of the Philippines, because you mentioned about arts and culture. I've written 2 novels about Zambales because my family's focus family and they're from Zambales. We interviewed a lot of fisher folks. This in relation to the Scarborough show that's being taken away from us, the political something. It's ongoing right now. And it's really very scary. I mean, it's a lot of concern. As a matter of fact, I made a Dulapang Pelikula that won the Palaka Awards. Why am I addressing this? Because what do we need as filmmakers are always grants. Because no banks would ever, unlike in America, there are banks that will bankroll your money to produce movies like this. It will always come to rom-com and things and horror films and other more sensual movies that's supposed to be consumed. And this is not what's ongoing right now. We have a very wide scope of distribution, exhibition of creative endeavors, particularly films, even books, by the way. Thank goodness for the National Book Development Board, who's been doing a lot of exhibition all over the world for the books that's written. And paintings. Of course, Doris Magsaysay, the mother of Miss Doris Magsayso's mother, Anita, is being what is this? It's being sold for millions of pesos. This is how to show you, of course, Mrs. Magsayso did not belong, of course, to the class. But a lot of artists belong to the middle class and they needed to be supported. But the question is the acquisition of capital to be able to produce the artworks. And how could I probably collaborate with the association of Mr. Marcos and help us?
Thank you. From what I understood from your question, there were several themes that you raised, including even a question on financial literacy. On that quick point, our organization is actually looking forward to working with the central bank on the financial literacy program with our seafarers, specifically because they are among the wealthier members of our governing population. On the second point, I think you also made reference to some grants. And I allow me to respond to this on 2 points, because you asked about access to it. Our organization is not primarily one that gives out grants, but we are conveners for partnerships. There is real value, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to social capital. For whatever it's worth, given the relationships that we do have, social capital, if we were to define this as the strength of our bonds between an individual and the community, we have very strong bonds with the sector and other potential funders. So on that basis, definitely I invite you to take note of my email address and happy to have a conversation. Definitely will get in touch with this number. But then on a related note, I think I addressed also the young policy researchers in the room. Being a member of the middle class myself, I think access to information when it comes to grants. I am a scholar, the one School of Public Policy at the National University. I was also a scholar at the UK Government Achieving School. And I was given these opportunities because I had access to information. And I do encourage us to look into our networks and relationships and find these opportunities. Thanks so much.
Incidentally, I just want to mention that, of course, Miss Magsaysay Ruth is from Zambales, I'm from Zambales. And we have a board of talents from their visual art to filmmakers. All other, I think we should be very happy to extend to the organization. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I have another question lined up.
Hello po, good morning. I am J. Maika Puntatay. I am a student from De La Salle University, Manila, and I am managing our organization, Model United Nations Communities newsletter. So my question po is directed to anyone, so anyone of you can answer. So some of you discussed the role of innovation such as automation or generative AI on development. Do you think the middle class Filipinos are vulnerable? And in what ways can we protect and strengthen the middle class workforce from the risks such as the potential displacement?
Maybe Toots might want to take this question. And then Rose. Okay.
Okay, we've actually at PIDS, we've already been discussing the issue about jobs being displaced because of the fourth industrial revolution, of which AI, I mean, if you actually go back the few years back, that was what we were discussing. However, technology it's a question of absorption of technology. Now, when the impact can be, plus or minus depending on how technology is absorbed. But the reality is AI is here to stay. Though the difficulty we have, I think, is that some of us are not very attuned to what's happening. And so it's going to be important for our digital skills to really be improved as a way to make sure that we can work side by side with technology. There will be yourself, you're very young. I'm sure they say that people like you will probably have 5 or 6 jobs in your lifetime. Whereas people like myself, usually we get one career and that's it. But in your case, because the nature of jobs will still change and they will keep changing very, very, maybe some you will see even in the immediate future. So the best thing is for you to be able to make sure that your skills, and that's not just true for the middle class, but for everyone, every Filipino for that matter, that we need to be much more competitive in the global market. Because the labor market isn't just Philippine labor market, but it's a global environment. So we need to make sure we're upskilling. We're continuing to understand what's happening, but more importantly, make sure that we know how to work side by side with technology. Thank you.
If I may just add, as actually it's the NEDA that is the secretary to the National Innovation Council, and I myself chair the executive technical board of that NIC. So we actually look at the middle class as a driver of this innovation. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the middle class actually puts a lot of priority on education, and we think they can also be putting those energies into acquiring lifelong learning, more skills, more competencies. And there's other very, very good qualities of the middle class. I'm also a proud member of the middle class. I don't think you should worry about innovation driving out the middle class, because it will actually be the middle class that will drive the innovation. Now, you're talking about earlier generative AI and that it could lead to job displacement. Just to say that a recently enacted law is the Trabajo para sa Bayan. I forgot the RA number, but anyway, we are currently crafting the 10-year Trabajo para sa Bayan plan. And this is really to, this early come up with those strategies. And our main objective is really to create a dynamic labor market that is attuned to the future and that will actually enable more Filipinos to achieve their ambition. And actually, if it's not all Filipinos to achieve their ambition, because as you know, the labor market is quite unique. It's not like your goods market or not even like your financial market where the transaction happens, almost in real time. In the case of the labor market, there's your demand, your supply, and sometimes, it's so difficult to have this atonement process happening. And that's where you need labor market facilitation. It takes a long time to develop the skills. So many number of years of education just to get into that labor supply. And so there's that problem of the time lag. And again, that's really where you need to have the labor market governance, which is really which is a responsibility of government. So like I said, this is something that we are currently crafting. We hope to present it to the president before the end of the year. It's really to show how we can, first of all, improve on the job opportunities, the business opportunities, not just for employment generation, but also for entrepreneurship skills and then entrepreneurship opportunities. And then on the part of the labor supply, it's really about the reskilling, as mentioned by Dr. Coots, reskilling, upskilling, etc. We're also looking at having a model for skills needs anticipation and improving actually the efficiency of labor market facilitation and of course the effectiveness of labor market governance.
Thank you. Yes, we have one more here.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kai Ordinario from Business Mirror. I just wanted to ask, would you say to anyone on the panel, would you say that we've had a pro-poor bias in terms of policy? That's why we have not been able to harness the strength of the middle class. That they, in a way, feel that they were left out in terms of certain situations like possibly disasters or response to COVID-19. And if yes, the answer is yes. So can you think of one or two concrete policy changes that should happen immediately? If not, if you think that you've not had that pro-poor policy bias, what can we do more of in order to lift more people to the side of the middle? Thank you.
Which panelist is brave enough to take on? All right. Okay, Marco and then Yusek Rose.
Kai, thank you so much for the question, for the provocative question. I'm Jesuit educated, so I don't mind that if we are pro-poor, I don't mind the preferential option for the poor. I would also call attention to the fact that we've also come a long way from our conversations. As a lawyer, when I was still a law student, imagine how sophisticated we are when we talk about poverty. The Philippine Supreme Court makes a distinction between homeless poor and homeless less poor. And here we are, 20 years later, talking about the difference. I do not mind the pro-poor bias or bent of government. It is our duty. So let's say I no longer in government. It is our duty as public servants and perhaps even as fellow human beings to minister to the needs of the people. That being said, I think part of the aspect of the middle class, and I've had several, as I shared earlier, it's been a topic of conversation among other friends as well. I think we, as a member of the middle class, have also been missing the mark. If you look at the literature, there are experts who tell you that, again, a large middle class is important to democratization and political empowerment. But whether or not we have seized the opportunities for political participation, I do not know. In fact, if I were to venture a guess, a more cynical or skeptical view, we have not. And maybe that is that part of the challenge. That, we have seized to we have failed to seize the spaces that are actually created for the middle class to participate. And hopefully, the day will yet come when that dream that the late tourism secretary had in one of our conversations before, that a real political revolution can happen with the middle class agenda is actually put front and center. And just one last point. That's part of the reason why earlier I was alluding to it. There is a meta layer when we talk about the middle class. Because the more we talk about it, we're actually talking about ourselves. And we realize the potential because we know what is at stake. We know what is at stake when we have an empowered middle class. Earlier, I mentioned Aniceto, who said that supposedly your politicians tend to cater to the middle class. But in the case of the Philippines, we tend to be marginalized. And there are anecdotal. My sister's driver agrees with me on this point. Sabi nga niya, paano naman kami? Paano tayo? You have the government looking after the poor, You have the rich not worrying too much because they are invested in the country's future. The same people who attend the same meetings and go to the same rooms and make the same decisions about our economy. But what about us? And I think ultimately it will be up to us because the poor have other things that they need to attend to. They need to eke out a living, and then the rich will not have our concerns at heart. So I think the empowerment will really have to come from the middle class.
Okay, Ms. Rose?
Yes, again, once again, thank you, Kai, for that, as Marco said, provocative question. And thank you for the response, Marco. Yeah, I would say that, that in the past, there's really, more of you could say, a pro-poor bias. We were using, in a sense, the Rawlsian social utility function, where we look at what really happens to the poorest people. That also, in a sense, kind of is also at the at the base of how we define poverty. And but just to say as well that we, at least us at the NEDA, and how we are seeing the policies evolving so far, we're seeing that more and more there's actually more attention being given to the needs of the middle class. So let's say, for instance, with respect to education. One of the things that does, in the recent past, that has come out, although it's also very, very controversial, is the UAQPE, universal access to quality tertiary education, which has actually been, criticized on so many fronts as saying that, it's leakage. It's really not the poor who are benefiting from it, and that's true. It's really middle class. And then we also have, I was just mentioning about the Trabajo para sa Bayan plan, and it's actually, we're looking at expanding lifelong learning opportunities. We're looking at expanding upskilling, reskilling. Again, these are middle class problems. But just to say as well that I think it's really because we have, as Marco said, we've come a long way. We have actually graduated a lot more people from poverty. The 4Ps is also a very, very good program that we could be proud of. Like they just actually they just released in the press that so many have already finished college education, and then so many have actually placed well in board exams. Ibang mga top pa talaga, mga laude-laude pa yung iba. So, and so we're seeing that over time, we are actually also really growing the middle class. As you reduce poverty, obviously you are growing the middle class. And so now it's really also about strengthening that middle class. So it's one thing to grow it, like we have the 4Ps, and so they have now reached out, graduated from being poor. They're no longer poor, but they're part of the middle class. But we want them to go much further than that. And so in terms of the policies, I think we actually are in the right direction, because it's really more about giving them those, the wherewithal, the capability in order to, move higher up that social ladder.
Thank you. We only have time for one more question. Please.
Good afternoon. I'm Maria Estal from the Council for the Welfare of Children, and I would like to thank the IDS for inviting the CWC to the Development Policy Research Forum and Press Conference. And I think we have very good presentations from our guest speakers. All are very comprehensive and also interesting. So my concern, I would like to address my concern to Dr. Jose Ramon Albert regarding the children's education, since I'm part of the Council for the Welfare of Children. It's about a quarter of 5-year-old children from middle-income families not in school. So we would like to hear, maybe hear what are the reasons or factors behind stating that as much as 24.1% of 5-year-old children are still not in school? Are there any studies behind this? And also another, parang as a follow concern, what could be the, in terms of policy, what could be the policy initiatives or interventions that we can focus on to address the concern? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. You see, actually, we were just a surprise because we were ranking out the profiles out of school children. It's one of the things that I've been talking of, I've been regularly monitoring for many years. So way back 10 years ago or more, out of school children is quite a lot, but it's gone down. We've been focusing on early childhood education, among other things. We've been trying to, the CCP has helped invest in the children of the poor, which is a good thing. And giving a bias for the poor, I fully agree. It's not an issue. It's actually an inclusion issue. But when I started to see that there were some children, 5-year-old children who were not in school, I started to wonder what exactly might have been the driver. Might have been an effect of COVID again. That people, as usual, they were a bit afraid of sending their kids to school because they could. But maybe now with the new FIES data, which we have not yet analyzed, we don't know yet. But what we are giving you is just information from the FIES 2021. And that was a concern, again, that is suggesting that every time something happens, a crisis happens. It seems that the children are one of the first to get affected. That's a big concern for me. That even I share your concern, not just from the perspective of education, but from many angles. That unfortunately, children are among the most vulnerable for our population, and even I'm surprised, children of the middle class seem to be vulnerable as well. So what can we do? Well, hopefully things have gotten arrested already. Hopefully, although I will have to check once the microdata will be there. But I suspect, it might have been a COVID effect as in other countries. But the reality is that I think we need to keep hammering down on people, that we need to invest in the education of our children, or even early on, particularly in reading skills. When we keep looking at all of the data from the PSA surveys, that always seem to suggest that one of the reasons, the biggest reason why children are not in school is, quote unquote, they lack interest. And when we started unpacking that reason, eventually we discovered that the children drop out of school partly because they feel that their grades are too low. And then when you start asking them, why are your grades low? They don't know how to read. And that's evidence, all the way, even I think DepEd has data even on the EGRA, the early grade reading assessments, that still show we're not doing a good job with reading. But we're not doing a good job with science and math either. So there are so many things that I hope that DepEd Secretary and his entire team will start working on, because it starts with basic education, particularly early childhood education. Thank you.
All right, so let me close. Unfortunately, we we have only time for the Q&A. We'd like to close this by inviting our panel to give their any closing thoughts before we end this part of the program.
Let me just say that when we started working on this paper, the whole point that we were trying to say was that the middle class needs to be strengthened. How do we strengthen the middle class? Because we want to dream of a predominantly middle class society, we need to get our act together, whether we're in government, private sector, we need to all work together, because this is our country and we need to invest in it. Thank you.
In protecting the middle class, a good governance approach would be necessary in order for them to be protected, in order for them to secure that, let's say, financial literacy programs that will allow them also to protect themselves together with what government is currently doing for them.
Yes, I just would like to articulate again the long-term development agenda. As you know, the first one is really about having a predominantly middle class society. And then the second, third, and fourth is really about how do we get there. So one is to have smart and innovative people with high regard for sustainable development and quality of life. Next is to have, people who are live healthy and long productive lives, but who devote themselves into nurturing their talents and their passions in order to contribute to society. And the third one is to people's Filipinos who live in a high trust society and who actually, are proud of themselves, high trust and caring society, and proudly identify themselves as Filipinos. I think this is really the key to strengthening the Philippines.
Just one PS again to our friends, the media communicators. I really hope that you do your part in helping to propagate the message and bringing them out. It's always a partnership with the government, public sector, and media in terms of making sure that issues are properly communicated to the public. And aside from just listening to experts, I would encourage you to consume their research because they do become very good discussion points, especially as basis for future investigation questions. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, Daniela, if you're still with us, do you have a closing thought? All right. So this has been a very enlightening discussion. Thanks to our esteemed panelists who provided valuable insights on the middle class and our development challenges. Thank you also to our audience and the media for posing interesting, challenging inquiries on our theme. So we will now present our tokens and certificates of appreciation to our panel. May I invite President Aniceto Orbeta and Vice President Marife Ballesteros to present our appreciation tokens.
Let me read the certificate of appreciation to the Undersecretary, Marie G. Edillon, for imparting their invaluable insights and inspiration during the 22nd Development Policy Research Month Kickoff Forum and Press Conference, given this 5th day of September 2024 at Novotel Manila Araneta City, Cubao.
May I request? Okay. Yes, may I request the panel? Yes. Again, allow me to express my deepest gratitude to our panelists for today's engaging discussions. Now we are almost at the end of our forum. I will now call on our Vice President, Dr. Marife Ballesteros, to deliver her closing remarks.
Thank you, Roel. Yes, I would like to congratulate everyone for this engaging discussion in this morning's Kickoff forum and press conference. I hope that this has deepened our understanding and appreciation of the DPRM theme, securing a future for all by growing a resilient middle class. And I think I like the visual representation made by Yusek Rose, where which provides us a, uh, um, a visual representation of what we want to achieve, which is to shift actually that curve towards the right. So as we shift that curve, we grow also. We grow the middle class at the same time. We also want to have a resilient middle class. So thank you to our esteemed panel, Yusek Rose Edillon, Attorney Marco Sardillo, Dr. Daniela Braun, and Dr. Toots Albert, and the other members of the authors of this year's theme, Dr. JP Rivera and Dr. Roel Briones. So we also thank Dr. Roel Briones for his skillful moderation of the discussion in today's forum, and also the PIDS Research Information Department for the smooth conduct of this morning's activities. I would like to also extend our gratitude to our partners in government, especially members of our DPRM committee. You can see the logo down here at this stand. Your continued support allows the PIDS to hold the DPRM annually and promote the role of development policy research in nation building over the years. Lastly, of course, we want to express our deep gratitude to our friends in the media. Your presence today is invaluable in extending the knowledge shared here to the greater public, and we hope that this knowledge can be shared to the greater public and other organizations that it may benefit. So actually, the Philippines is one of those countries identified by the World Bank in the World Bank Development Report in 2024 as being stuck in the middle income gap. And if we look at the visualization this morning, again, the ladder, means that sometimes we move forward, but we can also move 2 steps below the ladder because of lack of resilience. So today's forum is a good avenue to start the productive and progressive exchange of ideas on how the country can move out of the trap and grow a resilient middle class. So it has been repeatedly said in our discussion today that the middle class is a driver of socioeconomic development. This income class is well positioned to sustain our economic growth through their distinct demographic profile, the capacity for both production and consumption. The middle class will thrive even more given the right environment and opportunity to create wealth and shared value. However, we also note that the middle class is highly susceptible to changes in global socioeconomic conditions, including, of course, your climate change. But this is not, but we are optimistic that there are opportunities for growth in navigating these global mega trends. The conversation this morning highlighted key areas that requires attention. First was on social justice, achieving social justice in the environment. And I think we don't really have to go far back to COVID-19. We just experience the devastation from the recent typhoon Karina and Enteng, which gives makes us think what we can do, or actually how the environment can social justice in the environment can be achieved through investments, through innovation, and through technology. The second area or pillars for this that was discussed is on leveraging technological disruption by revitalizing key industries in the Philippines, such as agriculture, manufacturing, and industry. Then we also had the discussion on upscaling our workforce for future skills and harnessing technology and innovation to improve public systems. As Dr. Braun mentioned, weak governance, corruption, bureaucracy, or red tape has actually one of the reasons for keeping us in the track. And maybe investments of innovations in using innovation in public systems can improve the process. So actually we are, as mentioned by Attorney Marco, we are going to further unpack the solutions to this issue. And we will do that in the next event for the DPRM. And I would like to take this opportunity to invite you all to the 10th Annual Public Policy Conference, or the APPC, which is happening on September 19 at Makati, Shangri-La. So it will be a whole day event featuring discussions on how our country can escape the middle income trap and expand the Filipino middle class in the face of emerging global megatrends. So once more, I invite everyone to join us in this exchange of crucial information and strategies for inclusive growth. So thank you very much. Magandang tanghali, and let's enjoy the lunch.
Thank you, Peng. Once again, we thank everyone who joined us today for the kickoff of the 22nd DPRM. The speakers' presentations will be available at the PIDS website, www.pids.gov.ph/events. We hope for your continued support throughout the 22nd DPRM. You may visit the DPRM website at dprm.pids.gov.ph for the lineup of activities. Mabuhay! Okay, we have one more requirement pala before everybody has lunch. Please assemble here in front for a photo op for all of the members of the audience this time.